And just like that, welcome back to Cache Canada Chats, and a huge welcome back to DougyB.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. People are just excited to have you back because I think the last time we did this with the Cache Tour and the Adventure Lab, people wanted to know even more. So we thought we would bring you back. And somebody asked in one of our posts, is this a rebroadcast of the show we did before? And no, it's not. And I said this is kind of like going backwards. So we gave you a real complicated, it wasn't so complicated, the real meat and potatoes part of doing it with Adventure Labs. Now we're going to kind of back up and kind of start from the beginning. So we're doing this kind of like the way Star Wars was done. We're not going to start at the beginning. We're going to start in the middle and work backwards. So here we go. Episode 1.
Episode 1.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So is that kind of what we've done?
Yeah. So there was a lot of feedback last time saying, it was all well and good, but basically, how do you use cachetur? So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about using cachetur to plan a generic trip. In this case, it's not going to be about Adventure Labs. We're going to talk about geocaches. And what we're going to do today is go a little bit into how to log into cachetur and authenticate.
Yep.
And we're going to create a trip. And the trip we're going to create today is going to be a trip for Dave and Karen to go back to Quebec City.
Awesome.
So
I would go back there in a heartbeat.
Dave decided that he's going to treat Karen, and he's going to put her up at the Chateau Frontenac, so that's where you're going to stay. Then we're going to go on a little walking tour of the old city, gathering some caches along the way. We're going to have a nice lunch at Bistro L'Origine.
Oh.
And then we're going to end our trip at the funicular so that we can get back up the hill after all that walking.
Nice. I haven't done that one yet, the funicular. It's been there. I've seen it. I don't know if it's been working when we're there. So before we launch, I have something to show, and before you launch into the program.
Go ahead.
Anything else? Okay. So we are... we're very glad to, it's not really a partnership, but we put the word out to cachetur, and they're very thrilled about what we're doing, and they're watching the show, and they really enjoyed what we did last time, and I asked them could they contribute some prizes again, and they have. So I'm just going to play a little kind of something I made up for them. It's about a minute or so, and here we go, and then I'll talk a little bit more after that. This is for cachetur. Wherever you want to go geocaching, let cachetur take you there. And there we go. Cachetur has donated 4 prizes for tonight. So we have 2 trackable tags and 2 swag bag packs. So we were pretty excited about that. So they've done a great job for us. We're really thankful. So we actually have a couple of questions right now. We're going to pull these up. Here's one from Aus Fox. Unfortunately, I've been unable to log into cachetur, and I hope you can help. We hope we can, and you did say this is one of the things that you're going to be looking at.
Right, so I did see Oz Fox's note on the YouTube stream. I wasn't actually going to show the login and authentication, but since we've had a question, I will, using another account, we'll actually create a login to cachetur, and then we'll go in and we'll authenticate with geocaching.
Nice. And Albedo39, one of our patrons, says, cool, I've been to all of those sites except the one in Canada. Cool, that's awesome. We have not been to the West Coast yet. We have been to the rest stop, West Virginia Tim's rest stop cache, and it was awesome. So, oops. Bulkingham, there we go. Whoop, hide. There we go. All right, carry on.
Okay, just give me 1 minute while I set up this this login.
Okay. All right. So, she said, Osvek says, unable to create an account.
Right.
I know that when you create an account, it needs to be the same username and password that you use to access your geocaching account.
That is certainly the recommendation. That's the best practice.
Yep.
It's not necessary, but that is the best practice. So,
yep.
Okay, so I'm going to actually display my screen. So just give me a second to share screen.
Okay. While he's doing that, Amy Mary is one of our newest patrons. Might sound new to caching, but good thing you're here. What is Cache Tour? You are about to find out. Cache Tour is a way that you can take geocaches that you want to find in a list, and you can put them into this program, which will allow you to create an itemized road trip and put them in order of the way that you want to go to them. And this helps you organize that, especially if you're going with a bunch of people, I found, or a big list of things to do on a road trip. So we are going to add, there we go. I added that.
So yeah, just to extend that a little bit, Cache Tour is a trip planning tool. So, you know, many of us have heard of other products like GSAC, which is a great database for all kinds of geocaching information and statistics. And we've heard of Project GC that has a lot of tools for your stats. It can also do some trip planning. Cache Tour is really about trip planning. That's the bread and butter of what Cache Tour is. And as Dave said, you can bring in lists of caches, and we're actually going to do that today. We're going to import a small bookmark list that I've already created for Quebec City. You can add individual caches. We're going to do that today too. Cool. You can bring in other waypoints such as lodging and food and rest stops. We're going to do a little bit about that. And you can have Cache Tour optimize your route, whether you are going via car or walking or any other thing. So what we're going to do is start with signing up for Cache Tour. So we had somebody say we're having trouble signing up for Cache Tour. So let's just go through that real quick. Here you'll see the Cache Tour screen. So all I've done is I've gone to the cachetur.no website. Sure I did. And it brings up a sign-in screen. Now, since we have not already signed in before, we need to sign up. This means that you do need to create a cachetur.no account. And again, the best practice is to create an account with the same username and password, same username at least, as your geocaching.com account.
Yeah.
Once we've created this account, so you'll see here the steps are on the screen. We're going to put in some information in step 1. We're going to have to accept the terms. We're going to have to register our email address and set our password. Then we'll get an email verification, and it'll create the user. Once we go through this, there's another step called authentication, where basically Cache Tour now links you up to your geocaching.com account. So first step here really is to log into geocaching. So you can see over here, I have another tab open. I've logged into geocaching using my Professor Pocket Query account. Mm-hmm. And that's who we're going to register today for Cache Tour. So I go back to my cachetur.no tab, and I'm going to create Professor Pocket Query, and I'm going to use the same naming convention that I used for my geocaching account. How did I hear about Cache Tour? From another geocaching user. Great. Next step. The username you select here will be used for both login and display. Why is it not letting me do this? Only consists. Oh, I know why. So this will be an example of where you can't use the same name. It says I can't use spaces.
Right. That was that was mentioned in a comment earlier on.
Yeah, you can't use
special
spaces.
characters. Yeah.
Right. All right. So we've gone through and we've created a cachetur user. And here's the basic terms of service. So we're going to scroll through this, and in our spare time, we'll read it, we'll accept it, and we'll move on. So it's now asking for
yeah, you need to put your email and recreate a password.
I don't use this email address very frequently, so just give me a minute to make sure I'm using the right one. More accounts. Yeah.
Yeah, Kantai says I've used cachetur for a cross-country trip across Canada 2 summers ago. It's a great way to keep track. And Osfox says the email wouldn't verify. I had an issue with my mother's geocaching account. She couldn't log the Mars rover. It needed to verify her email, which I did, and I had to send a note to geocaching.com and the help file, and they got it to work.
Interesting. Well, and that's what Osfox might have to do. You might have to actually contact cachetur about why that email isn't registering.
Yep.
So I've gone ahead and put in my password. I'm now waiting for that email to arrive. So I'm checking on my cell phone. And one thing to make sure you do is to check your spam folder. Sometimes I've seen cachetur mail show up in your spam folder.
And it showed up for the prizes for tonight.
Right.
I didn't think they were going to respond, and I checked my spam folder, and there they were.
Yeah, I don't know really why that is. As far as I know, cachetur.no has a good reputation, but some systems put their email into spam. And I did this process earlier today for another account, and it can take several minutes before the email comes through. So we're dependent on that email, and it hasn't come through yet.
So Mrs. Weaver, while we're waiting for that, Mrs. Weaver asked, can this be used in any country?
Absolutely.
And CG Hove says, yes, can be used in any country where there's internet.
Yes, you can actually use this to plan a trip in any country. You can use this to create a printed output of your itinerary. You can use this to create a GPX file of your route or your waypoints. Or you can actually use the website that we're going to show today to create a trip and then use the mobile phone smart app from cachetur to actually go on that trip.
Nice.
So, Osfox, I'm sorry it's taking a little bit longer tonight to get that authentication email. Basically, what you would do is you would get a confirmation code. You would paste the code in here and go to the next step. Your user would be created, and then you would get what's called an authentication screen that says, we now need to authenticate you to geocaching.com, and that's why you need to be logged in to geocaching, like we are over here. And
that's the same as Project GC.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same as most of the partners that use the geocaching API, whether it's Cachely and you're doing it on your iPhone or any number of other tools. You're basically using the geocaching API infrastructure, and you're authenticating, allowing this application to access GC. All right. So having said that, Oz, please, if you want to contact me offline, go ahead. DougyB.gc@outlook.com, or you can also contact cachetur.no. All right. Yeah.
They're pretty good at getting back to you when you type in. Just go to the help and then type in your issue. There's a whole list of things that you can choose from, and you can also go to other and then just apply your question.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next step now. So we have successfully created an account, and we've successfully authenticated that account. The other thing that you need to do when you create the account is set your time in units. So you can set to a 24-hour clock, a 12-hour clock. You can set various different date formats, and you can set your units to metric or imperial. Okay. So now we're in the main cachetur screen. And this is the cachetur screen for a brand new user. In this case, my wife has graciously allowed me to use her account. So thank you, P. Karen. And we're doing that because we've never actually used Karen's account to create a trip before. So this is a simulation of a brand new user starting out cachetur from the first time. Okay, so there is an awful lot on this screen, and that is because there's an awful lot that cachetur can do. We today are going to focus on the basics. We're focusing on creating a small trip so that we can then use that information to enjoy our trip when we're in Quebec City. So there will be lots of other questions that you might have. There are a ton of resources. So you can see here on cachetur.no, there's tools and resources. You can go in here, you can do a Google search for cachetur to get additional information. And then there's also the help center, and you can send a message to cachetur. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so here we go. Are you all ready? We're going to create a trip.
We're ready. We're in full screen.
Great.
They don't see our ugly faces anymore.
They don't see me sticking my tongue out at them.
There you go. So you can do anything you want. They can't see you.
So what we're going to do is create a new trip. We go up here to trips, and we scroll down to create new trip. All right, so again, we're going to keep this very simple because we're just starting out. So the trip information screen is where we're going to focus on creating the trip. We're going to have a romantic lunch in Quebec City. There you go, Dave.
Another one.
Another romantic lunch in Quebec City. So this is just a name. We give it a name. One of the things I like to do when I'm creating my cachetur trips is I actually like to put the date. So for example, if we were doing this on March 27th, I would put that date as part of my title. And that way, when I'm looking at multiple cachetur trips, they're ordered by date. All right, it's totally up to you, but that's what I like to do. We then go and determine what kind of trip type we're doing. Are we hiking? Are we going by car? Are we going by bicycle? Are we skiing? Are we going by boat? Or are we doing a long trip? In this case, we're doing a walking tour of Quebec City. If any of you have any knowledge of Quebec City, particularly the downtown area or the old town area, it's quite hilly. So even though we're walking, it's going to feel like hiking. Okay. We are going to our trip destination of Quebec City. This is important because it actually sets time zones in part based on this, in part based on what's in your trip. The next part here is about dates and times. So what I'm going to suggest for everyone is that when you start creating a trip, click this box that says time is not decided. That basically means that your trip is in draft. Once you've done all the work to prepare your trip, you've got all your waypoints in, everything's in the right order, then you can come back and edit this and change it so that the time is decided and it's in final. But for now, we're going to say that it's in draft. We're just going to pick a date in the future. Let's just say June 26th. We're going to be in Quebec City. And we know that, that Karen likes to sleep in. So we're not going to start at 7 in the morning. We're going to change our start time to 10 in the morning. All right. The time zone for our start, they may or may not have Quebec City in here. So let's just choose Montreal, which is also not in here. Interesting. All right. We'll just choose Toronto because that's all in the same time zone.
Yep.
And our end date, well, we know that Dave can't last the whole day, so we're going to have to get back by 4 o'clock so he can have a little nap. And this is just a target time. It doesn't have to be exact. This is just a planned time, a target time. We can change that at any time if we want. Right? Duration and length, you can put in there if you want. This is informational, and again, there's a description. So, Dave is taking Karen out for lunch and a long walk. That's our trip. So, we're going to move on from here. We're going to create our trip now. All we've done is put in some very basic information. There are other screens here for creating a new trip. You could start by putting some waypoints in here. Mm-hmm. You could go in here and create some or change some settings on how Cachetur is going to work with you in creating your trip. But for the purposes of what we're doing, we're just going to leave everything at the default. And we're going to scroll down and look at these last couple of things on the screen. Now, this thing is participants. One of the things about Cachetur is that you can share with other participants. So if I wanted, if Dave wanted to invite me along for the trip, for example, I don't know why he would, he could put 3 participants in here, and then once he's created the trip, he could invite, 2 other people to be able to either view this trip as an observer or to work on this trip as a creator or editor, right? So they could actually be invited to add to the trip. The other thing that we can do is make it either private or we can choose to give a password and only allow people with the password to come in. I tend to just leave it on private, and then if I want to share it, I increase the number of participants, and then once I'm finished my trip, I share it. And we're going to show you how to share it later. So for our purposes, we've created the trip, given it the information. Now we're going to save it.
Nice.
All right. So here we have our trip. We can see here from this icon that it's a hiking trip. The trip info is for another romantic lunch in Quebec City. We can see very clearly that it's still in draft mode, right? Mm-hmm. On the right over here, we can see that there's a date with a stroke through it. That indicates that it's a draft date, so it's not finalized. We've got our target, which is Quebec City. We have the host information, and you can see because we've already authenticated to geocaching.com that it's actually pulled up. You can see here my wife's avatar. It's pulled up her geocaching avatar, so that's a nice touch. Okay. And then we go down here, we've got a couple of sections. One says the trip date is not yet decided. This will change once we've changed this from a draft, and you can see that there's a remove draft status button here. We've got the suggested trip dates. So if you share this with somebody else, they can come in and add a suggestion with this button here, and they can suggest different dates. So if you're early in the planning stages and it doesn't work for them, they can say, give me another time. There's the waypoint section. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on this in a minute. There is participants and invitees. And as I said before, we can invite other participants. So we're going to get to that a little bit later. And there's a comments section for basic comments. All right. So what we need to do now is start our actual trip. And as we said, Dave's splurging, and we're going to be staying at the Chateau Frontenac. So we need to add our lodging information. And we know it's going to be at the Chateau Frontenac.
Chateau Frontenac.
Ouais. But we need to add coordinates. So I'm going to just pop over to Google Maps, and you can see I've already got Quebec City opened here. I'm going to scroll on in, zoom, zoom, zoom. And you can see here is the Fairmont, Le Chateau Frontenac. I'm simply going to right-click on that. It brings up coordinates. I'm going to click on those coordinates. Down here, it says they've been copied to the clipboard. I go back over here, and I paste those coordinates in. You also have a comment field.
So he makes it look so easy.
It is so easy.
That's awesome.
So easy.
Yep.
Right? Again, I'll go through it quick. We went to Google Maps, right-click anywhere on the map, anywhere you want to add a coordinate. It brings those coordinates up right at the top. Click on them. Now they're copied to the clipboard, and you simply paste them with either a right-click or Control-V into that coordinate field.
Nice.
Simple. The comment field is a very interesting field. So you could put your reservation information in here, for example. You could put the phone number. You could put any information in here that you want, and you could even put in a URL for the registration or for the hotel or anything else. The last field is a priority field. So we're not going to talk about priorities today. That's a little bit more advanced than we're going to do today. So for the purposes of starting out with cachetur, just leave it on hyphen, which is really no priority. All right.
As they say on Geocache Talk, that's for another show.
It sounds like I'm going to have to start booking time in my calendar for the next few months.
You are, because we're going to, as a sneak peek, we're going to have you on for Project GC.
Oh.
There we go.
Oh, well, thanks for telling me that.
It was in a survey, and you're the one that said, "Oh, me."
I put my hand up.
You
That's
did.
That's right. All right. So we've added that first waypoint, and now you can see in here we've got this waypoint. It says number 1, Chateau Frontenac. It's got a little icon that indicates it's lodging. It's got our coordinates. It has the information that I put in about reservation. All right. Now, with this waypoint, you also have the ability to bring your cursor over here, and there's a little floating button that allows you to go in, and you can now edit some information if you need to. So you can go back and edit any of this information at any point in time. And we're actually going to come back and edit something later on one of our waypoints. Okay? So
nice.
For those of you who watched the previous episode on cachetur and Adventure Labs, we showed something called bulk waypoints. So I am not going to go through bulk waypoints today. Mm-hmm. You can go back and watch the other video on that. But I am going to show you how to bring in geocaches from a bookmark list.
Yes.
All right. Now, I see there's a question.
Yeah, I think that's the question that Mrs. Weewer is asking. Do you need to do this with every stop or just waypoints?
Right.
And you're going to answer this in coming up.
Yeah, let's answer that right now. So
yeah.
For cachetur, a waypoint is anything that you want on your trip. A waypoint could be a place that you're meeting someone. It could be a tourist attraction. It could be a geocache. It could be a waypoint from a geocache, right? So it could be an Adventure Lab stop. It could be anything. So a waypoint is anything you want on your map as far as cachetur is concerned. Mm-hmm. You don't have to add waypoints one at a time. So there's multiple ways to bring in bulk waypoints. Again, in our last show, we showed how to use the bulk waypoint tool, which you click on waypoints and bulk add waypoints. And
that normally comes from, or can come from, a list. So if you created a list of 30 caches that you must visit, then we bring them in that way. Yeah.
Right. And you can go through this on your own. The bulk waypoint tool has a lot of information in here on the format.
Yep.
That's not what we're going to do today. But what we are going to do is we're going to load up a number of geocaches from a bookmark list.
Oh, this is okay. All right.
Okay.
There we go. Yep.
So, because we haven't shown that before. So,
yeah.
Now, I've already created the bookmark list, but I'm just going to go through and show you what I did. Mm-hmm. So here is the geocaching map for Quebec City. And again, for those of you who aren't familiar with Quebec City, it's got quite a lot of up and downs and staircases and whatnot. So I didn't want to go too crazy. And because this is an introduction, I didn't want to get into things like multis and where I goes and whatnot. So we're going to focus on a basic walking tour we're going to focus on traditional caches. We're going to focus on virtual caches. And later on, we're going to add one mystery cache with corrected coordinates. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I looked around here, and here's right here is the Chateau Frontenac. All right, so that's our hotel, and then here's the lower city down in this area. And I looked on the maps and I realized that you can walk down this street, and it's quite steep, and then you can go down all the way down to the St. Lawrence River, come back up, and right here is what's called a funicular, which is in this case is an incline railway that has these nice little cable cars that bring you back up to the base of the Frontenac. So what I did was I simply selected virtuals and traditionals that were in this area, and I put them in a list. So let me.
If you're interested in seeing those caches in Lower Town, we do have our episode from Quebec City. For all of those caches down there. Not every single one of them, but pretty much the 2 virtuals, the traditional, the 3 virtuals. I think
looks like there's more virtuals now than when you were there.
Yeah, I think we didn't show the 1 virtual. We showed 2 and the 2 traditionals that are down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here is the list that I created. So this is just a standard geocaching list. It's simply called Quebec City. Right? And these are in, no particular order. I guess it's just alphabetical order on the list. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we come back here, and what we want to do is from waypoint, we click on the waypoint menu item, and then we come down to this one that says import from bookmark list. Okay. Cachetur goes off, and remember, we're already logged into Cachetur and authenticated to geocaching, so it's going off and it's looking for, in this case, P. Karen's bookmark lists. All right. Now, a little trick. This is a geocaching trick. If you want to bring in somebody else's bookmark list, go find their bookmark list and copy it so that it's now your bookmark list.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If it's a public list or if you have access to that list, you can copy it. Just make it your list, and now you can import that list into Cachetur. All right? So this is the only list Karen has, so we don't have to worry about that. We click on import, and it says the caches have been imported. We click on the back arrow, and that back arrow takes us back to our trip. And now, when we look at waypoints, we have a list of geocaches that have been added. And we also can see that we're starting to get some information in here. We're going to get a little bit more information in here as we go forward, and we'll explain some of that information in a bit. But what's important to see here is that we've got a list of geocaches from our bookmark, which is really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you something else. Because we have a number of waypoints in here now, we start to get this summary section populated. So it's starting to tell us things about our geocaching. We have 5 traditionals and 5 virtuals, 2.5 kilometers. We have 10 geocaches with no priority. One of the geocaches has had DNF logs. Right? We also go down here and we start to see additional information. So we have cache statistics. So in our trip, it's now telling us information about our DT, about favorite points, sizes, elevation, and regions. Later on, we're going to look at the printout, and the printout will show you DT, favorite points, etc. for each cache. So you're going to have a lot of detailed information in your actual Cachetur trip plan, and we're going to get to that in a bit. But you do have some statistics here, so you can start to see, is this going to be a difficult trip? Well, we've got minimum difficulty 1 and maximum 2.5, so it's not going to be that difficult. Is this going to be hard terrain? We've got a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2, so again, not that difficult. Okay. The last section that I want to show you here, and we'll come back to this multiple times, is this map section. And this is one of the coolest features of cachetur. So we've now brought in waypoints, and I know it's a little hard to see. We can't zoom in any farther than this, but we actually have right here, number 1, we have our waypoint for the Chateau Frontenac, and then we have all of these other caches that we just imported. Okay. What we need to do at some point is sort out how we're going to proceed for our dig. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But for the time being, I want to bring in just a few more waypoints. So the next waypoint that I want to bring in is this mystery cache that's here. Right, so just outside the Chateau Frontenac, there is a cache called Explorers on the Moon. So let's bring this mystery cache up.
I think that's new.
No, it's been there a long time.
Been there a while? Okay, maybe I didn't notice.
Now, I have not solved this, and I'm not going to put the solved coordinates in. I'm just going to put in fake solved coordinates. So I'll just change this by a little bit. And now we've got corrected coordinates for this cache.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we want to add this to our list because it's very close to the hotel. So here's our hotel. Dave actually got a room with a view over this little park. We want to go find this cache that's in this park. So we're going to add this one cache to our cachetur plan by grabbing the GC number. So we can just click up here beside the GC number and we can highlight it. We can Control-C to copy it. Well, Control-C on Windows anyways. And then we come over here to cachetur, and we're going to click this Add Waypoint button again. But this time, we're going to tell it we're adding a geocache. And all we're going to do is give it the geocache number, the GC number. Right? We could put in the corrected coordinates. We could add comments, but we're not. We're going to keep it simple. So we click Add. And now you can see that it's added this at the bottom of our list. Right? So we're going to add 2 more waypoints, and then we're going to come back and deal with the corrected coordinates for this particular geocache. And the reason I want to come back is because cachetur doesn't necessarily have all of these geocaches in its database at any time. Sometimes it has to go and fetch the details from geocaching, and that takes a few minutes. So as you're doing your trip planning, you might see one of these things grayed out. It might say fetching information. So just be patient with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our lunch location as a waypoint. And we said that we're going to go to the Bistro de l'Origine, which, as you can see, is down here in the lower city. So again, we go into Google Maps, and all I'm going to do is right-click on that location and pull up the coordinates to my clipboard, and then I'm going to add a waypoint in cachetur.no. This time, it's food or rest. There's our coordinates. This is the Bistro l'Origine. And Karen wanted to go here because someone told her to try the patio. So we're going to add that as a comment.
Patios are important.
So now you can see down here we've got the Bistro l'Origine. It's got the coordinates. It's got our comment. And we've got the little icon indicating that it's food. And the last waypoint that we're going to add is we're going to add the waypoint for the funicular. So I'm going to switch in Google Maps to the satellite view.
And here's a question. Can personal notes from the geocache page be imported into cachetur?
Yes, they can. Remind me in a minute, and I'll try and find that feature.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the base of there's the funicular there. Here's the base of the funicular, so I'm just going to right-click and grab these coordinates to use as our waypoint for the funicular. And again, we go back to cachetur, down here where it says add waypoint. In this case, this is a station stop or a terminal. It's the funicular. It is the funicular.
Funicular.
And there are our coordinates. And our comment is take this instead of the stairs. All right. So here we have now created our walking tour of Quebec City. We have our starting point of our hotel. We have a bookmark list of geocaches in no particular order. We've manually added a mystery cache with corrected coordinates. We'll get to that in a second, that we want to visit. We have a lunch place, and we have where we want to end up, which is the funicular. So there's two things that we haven't done yet. One of them is we haven't imported the corrected coordinates, and the other is we haven't really sorted out the order that we're going to do these in. So cachetur can do both of those things for you, and it's amazing. So
this is the one thing that I've had trouble with. So this is what I'm waiting for. Because my map is the order. My map is like lines all over the place, and I tried this the other day, but I couldn't. For some reason, I don't know what I was doing wrong. So here I am.
We're going to make a cachetur expert out of you.
Excellent.
All right. So let's go back to corrected coordinates for a minute. So let's imagine, if you will, that our trip is not about Quebec City, but it's a trip to do GeoArt. And we've found this amazing GeoArt, and we've solved 100 puzzles. And we want to create a trip to go and find all those puzzles. We could create a bookmark list of all of those GeoArt, and we could import it just like we've done here with our Quebec City trip. But then we don't have the corrected coordinates. So assuming you've put the corrected coordinates into the geocache, and remember, we did that over here, right? For Explorers on the Moon, we put in the corrected coordinates. So assuming you've done that, cachetur makes it simple to bring in corrected coordinates. You click on waypoints, and you then go down to import corrected coordinates. You click on that, and it brings up this little menu. And all you do is click import, and it goes out and looks at every geocache in your list. And if there are corrected coordinates, it will bring them in.
Nice. So
as you can see, it says corrected coordinates for GC4VX8J have been updated. Once you've finished, it'll tell you that the import process is complete. Just click on this arrow to return to the trip. And now we're back in our trip, and we're going to scroll down here, and you can see that something has changed. We now have this little icon here. If we know what that icon means, it says has corrected coordinates.
Nice.
So now when cachetur does its trip planning, it's going to actually use the corrected coordinates as opposed to the posted coordinates for thinking about the map and the route. Okay? So that's a very important thing to understand. You can do this with anything that has corrected coordinates. So if you've determined what the final location is for a multi, or if you know the final location for a where I go, you can put those corrected coordinates in here. All right, put them into your geocache listing on gc.com, and then you can import corrected coordinates.
Yeah,
alternately,
so the Howler GeoArt here in Ontario, somebody commented, would be a great use for cachetur.
Absolutely.
Because it's all over different roads and yeah.
So a couple of things about corrected coordinates. So alternately, with this edit button, so you remember I talked earlier about the edit button?
Yep.
Right, so let me close that. So again, you've got this edit button. Alternately, you could go in and put the corrected coordinates in here yourself, right, into cachetur, but keep in mind, they won't be in geocaching. They're only here in cachetur.
Yep.
All right.
There was a question on that, I think, right there. I think it's Once you have changed the corrected coordinates, can you see these corrected coordinates? And you just showed them.
So there's a couple of variations to that answer. So let's say that you've made the corrected coordinate change in your geocaching profile.
Yep.
Obviously, you can see them. Now you've fetched those corrected coordinates into your trip. It's your trip. You can see them. If you have participants and you share this trip with participants, they can see the corrected coordinates in cachetur.
Mm-hmm.
They can also export those corrected coordinates back to geocaching into their geocaching account.
Right.
So if you're now a group who's solved the Howling GeoArt in Ontario, and some of you have certain corrected coordinates and others don't, you can create a cachetur trip and bring in that bookmark list, but then you can invite the other people to participate as not just observers, but to actually be able to edit this list. And each of you can import your corrected coordinates, and then once they're all imported, you can all export them back to GC. Each and every one of you can export all the coordinates.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Right. So very powerful feature. So that was a great question, and keep that in mind if you're doing any kind of group planning. That's an amazing feature to be able to share those corrected coordinates, but don't abuse it. Right. So a lot of cache owners get really ticked off when you share corrected coordinates. So please, don't abuse that capability. Use it wisely. Use it in your groups, and I'll leave it at that. Okay. So let's move on from the waypoints to routing. So Dave, you said earlier that one of the big challenges you have is your map has all these lines all over the place.
Yeah. Before you move on, we're going to bring somebody in because she's going to get a highlight of what's going on. There we are. Lyric Lass has joined us.
How you doing?
Hey, Karen, how you doing?
Very good, Doug.
I hope you're excited about this romantic trip that Dave's taking you on.
I am. I just wanted to know when it's going to happen.
Apparently June 26th.
There you go.
Okay.
Well, but if Dave invites you to participate in the trip, you can make a suggestion to change the date. That's fully within your.
Will that be this year or?
Well,
we don't know. This year is totally open now.
That's true. That's true.
So where am I going? What am I doing?
You're going to Quebec City. You're staying at the Chateau Frontenac. Let's look up here.
Oh, wow. I love that. Okay.
Yeah. Dave decided to splurge.
Great.
So you're going to stay at the Chateau Frontenac. You're going to go and do a number of geocaches. You're going to have lunch at Bistro L'Origine. It's someplace that somebody recommended to you, and they said try the patios. So we put that comment in here. And then you're going to end your day, your walking tour at the funicular, and you're going to take the little railway back up the hill to the Frontenac.
I've always wanted to go on the funicular.
Mm-hmm. So that's our trip, but we don't have it in the right order. And Dave was mentioning earlier that when he looks at cachetur, all he gets is a bunch of lines, and you can kind of see those lines here. It's hard to see because, again, I can't zoom in any farther for this trip, but these are all these kind of straight lines. It's not really in any particular order, right?
Oh, that's as close as you can get on that one?
And yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That it won't let us zoom in any farther.
Yeah. Okay.
So for a small walking trip like this, it might be a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to show you how we can sort through that. For a road trip, if you're planning a longer road trip, it's much easier to see the distance and the stops between destinations.
We have a comment that you can change the map providers in the top right corner and possibly get other zoom levels. So that that one.
Right. So, you could go to OpenZoom or OpenStreetMap, right, and zoom in. So that's an excellent tip.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I tend to default to the default map, but this is a great tip. So, Dave,
awesome.
This is what you were talking about, right?
Yep, that's what I was talking about. Except mine's worse.
So
it's like,
I'll zoom in one little bit more, and you can see here everything is ordered the way that we brought it in. So we've got the chateau here, which is where we're going to start, and then the number 2 on our list was the first virtual that was brought in, and then number 3 was the next traditional, and then 4, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all over the map, literally.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
And then our bistro is here at number 13, and then we end at the funicular. And again, we know from personal experience that the Frontenac is at the top of this cliff. The cliff is right here. You can kind of see it on the map. There's roads that go down, right? There's lots of inclines through here. There's some walking paths. Some of them are hard to see on this map. And then there's the funicular. So what we're going to do is a combination of some manual sorting and then some cache tour sorting to optimize our trip. All right?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is go back to the geocaching map for just a minute. Now we're staying here at the Chateau Frontenac. It's right here. And we can see that right outside the Frontenac is the Samuel de Champlain virtual. So why don't we simply say, you know what, we're going to make that our second stop. So here we are, Samuel de Champlain. It's currently listed as number 11. And you'll note that when I highlight 11 with my mouse, when I move the mouse over 11, I get a new icon. It's a 4-way arrow. And it says I can click and drag to edit sorting. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull that right up here, and I'm going to make that number 2. So we're going to do this again just to make sure everybody caught it. So let's go back. We say, okay, that was very close. And then the next closest one is this. Well, actually, I've already highlighted it. It's Explorers on the Moon. It's that mystery cache that we put the corrected coordinates in for. So we're going to say, all right, we're going to do that one next. So we'll just drag that up and make that our third stop. And then we're just going to do one more. So we see that the Castle View traditional is really close as well. So here's Castle View. And we're going to make that our fourth. But something doesn't look right. We've got number 1, number 11, number 12, and number 3. What's important to note is that when you manually are moving these waypoint entries around on the screen, everything's in a bit of a draft mode. And you might have noticed up here in the top right, as soon as I dropped that first one, I had this button that said Save Sorting. This is very important. So once I've done my manual sorting, I click Save. Now, it hasn't changed the numbering, but it has saved my sorting. So the other thing to click is Refresh or Reload. All right, so your browser should have a refresh or a reload button. When you click that, and you wait just a minute, it brings back our refresh trip, and you can see that these numbers are in the correct order. All right. So Dave, what we did there is we did a little bit of manual sorting. Now, our map hasn't been updated yet, so not entirely. So don't really worry about the map just yet.
And you can't do the manual sorting when you have, say, 80 caches all over the place. You could, but it would take a long time.
You could. I've actually done it, and it is doable. It is time consuming, and there are potentially better ways to do it. But here's something to keep in mind, and it's one of the reasons that I chose Quebec City and a walking tour for today's demonstration. The next thing we're going to show is the optimization that cachetur has for a trip, but it's not always perfect. It doesn't always know your intent, right? It just says you're doing a hiking trip, so I'm going to optimize it this way, or you're doing a car trip, I'm going to optimize it that way, based on whatever it knows about the map. So keep in mind, it's not perfect. It's a great tool. It's really helpful. It's not perfect. So it's important to understand this manual process as well, because you may have to touch stuff up, to tweak it, to tune it just a little bit to make it work for you.
Right.
And in this case, I know that that Karen does not want to walk down the hills and then up the hills and then down the hills and then up the hills.
No.
Right. Karen wants to do is start at the top and work her way down, and then maybe walk up a little bit to the bottom of that funicular and then take that nice train ride home. And that's what we're going to do. Yep, that's what we're going to do. So now we've done a little bit of manual sorting. We're now going to use the waypoint sort tool to prioritize some of this. But before we do that, let's just take a quick look at what we've got. We have our starting point, and it's very important that you make your starting point number 1. All right. We have 2, 3, and 4. So these are the caches that we know we want to do next. All right.
Yep.
And we have our ending point, and it's very important that you put your ending point at the end. Because when
Makes sense.
Yep. Well, when you use the waypoint prioritization tool, you mark what you want to prioritize, and it assumes that the first one in your list is where you're starting, and the last one in your list is where you're ending. So it's not going to determine where you should end. It's thinking you've told it where you want to end.
Good.
All right?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so let's go into that tool now. We click on waypoints, and we click on sort prioritize waypoints. And here are all of our waypoints, right? So we've got the Chateau Frontenac. We know that that's where we're starting. We know we want to do Samuel de Champlain next. We know we want to do Explorers on the Moon. And then we know we want to go to Castleview. Well, and we know we want to end at the funicular. Everything else is what we want to prioritize. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use this button called Toggle Marked. And it's going to toggle anything that's marked to unmarked, or anything that's not marked to marked. So because nothing is marked yet, we click it, it marks everything. We're then going to unmark the ones that we know are good, and we're going to leave Castleview as our starting point. We're going to leave funicular as our ending point. And then we're just going to scroll down here, and we're going to say calculate and sort by optimal route.
Ah.
Now, here we can see that it hasn't started at the Frontenac because we unmarked that. It started at that third cache that we said we want to do that cache third. So it's got that starting point, and then it's optimized the rest of the trip. Let's just zoom in a little bit more. All right. Now, because it's a walking trip, it knows about paths, right? So it's taking us, it looks like this might be a bridge, and then we go down, and we go down this road. We're going to do this one. We're going to do this one, right? We're going to come across here. We're going to go down. We're going to come up a little bit. It says, okay, then we're going to have lunch. And we're going to do this last traditional and go to the funicular. Now, we have told it simply prioritize these based on the type of trip that we're doing, in this case, hiking or walking, and based on its knowledge of the map. In some cases, you got to trust it. In this case, I'm trusting it because I kind of know a little bit about this terrain in this area. So I know that it's done a good job. So for example, you can see here, I'm going to zoom in, that it's actually chosen a walking path to go across Place de Canatia to get to this particular cache down here. So I think that it's done a great job. I could go back up here and I could grab these items and I could manually change them, right? I can do that in the screen as well. But I'm happy with how it sorted it for me, so I'm going to tell it to save that sorting and prioritization. Okay. Oh.
Now, can you go back to that calculate and sort by optimal route? Because when I do it, it's just gray and I can't do it.
So it's waypoints, sort prioritize waypoints.
Yep, I did that.
Right. Now you get this screen and it says waypoints, and you have all of these buttons up here. The first thing I did was I clicked this one, say toggle marked.
Did that.
And basically that just changes things from toggle, marked to unmarked.
Yep.
So when you get green, do you get green?
Well, yellow, green, whatever.
Okay. So you can unmark the ones you don't want marked. Right?
Yeah, I did that.
Now you've got all of these green ones. You scroll down to where it says, all the way at the bottom, it says calculate and sort by optimal route.
Yeah, and it won't let me do that.
That button's not there?
Yeah, the button's there, but it won't let me click on it. It just has the arrow, the cursor. It doesn't change to a clickable hand. So I can't do that.
Are you importing the same caches that I have, or are you looking at different caches?
No, it was a different list completely.
Right. So if you go back to the other screen, right? So if you cancel out of this, for example,
Okay.
and you go back to your trip screen,
Yep.
you might have a whole list where some of these caches are some of these waypoints are sort of grayed out.
Yeah, one of them's pink.
Yep.
Grayed out, yeah.
Yeah, so it hasn't captured all of the information yet for those geocaches.
Oh, okay. That might be why.
Yeah, that's in my experience. That's why that happens, right? When I try to optimize something and it doesn't have all the information yet for the geocaches, it won't let me.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll take a look at that.
So it brings up an important point with cachetur. Sometimes a little patience is necessary. So what's happening is there's an awful lot of work going on in the back end, and let's keep in mind that cachetur is there's no charge to use cachetur. Right?
Yep.
So it's not running on an entire Amazon server web farm. It's running on a small set of servers that are paid for by people that run it, plus some community contributions. So it processes stuff in batch. It's not as powerful as the GC site, so it takes longer to pull stuff in. Additionally, they don't keep a list or all the details for every geocache in existence, right? They can only hold so much information. So if the geocache is not in their database, they need to go and fetch that, and it might take time to fetch that from Groundspeak.
Mm-hmm.
I see, Dave, that there was a question that popped up on the screen that said, "Was it more than 80 waypoints?" And
yeah, and my list was.
Right.
So that's an issue.
Right. It's a feature. So CJ Hove is bringing up a good point. If you go into waypoints and prioritize waypoints, does it tell you on here? Yeah, right down here. You can sort up to 80 waypoints automatically.
Mm.
So in your case, Dave, you may have to select a fewer number of geocaches. So you would say, okay, I'm just going to do this group, these 40 or these.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Right, and then it would give you the all go. Another way to do that, which is more advanced, and we're not going to get into that today, is to do sub trips.
Yep.
So, for example, if you're doing 200 caches over a 3-day trip, you would create a sub trip for potentially each day. That might keep you below the 80 cache or 80 waypoint limit for this automatic sorting. So there's tricks around it, but I think CJ Hove might have also hit the nail on the head for your problem. It's more than 80.
Yeah, that did it exactly. So I highlighted 10. I just went and clicked 10, and it showed up, and it's fine. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you,
so
everybody.
The important part to remember about this this particular waypoint sorting was that although we did toggle everything on, we actually turned off a few of our items, right? So we don't have to have it automatically sort everything. We can sort a portion of our trip.
Well, that makes good sense, yeah.
Yeah. But what's important is that you have, the at the top of your list, you have where you want it to start that prioritization, and the bottom of the list is where you want to end. And then you
can just do a portion of it, because this is going to be our first half of the day, and then we're going here for lunch, and then we can prioritize the second half of the day.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And something that is very important, I think, we actually have somebody that works at cachetur is here. And Dave, Doug, if you scroll down on your page that you've got open now, I think it says it on there. So scroll down on your list. Okay, right, I think It's in the blue. So if you look in the blue, and CJ Hove is saying we're contribution funded, and I think Cache Canada is going to help. We're going to send a donation. It says, help keep this feature and Cache.no running by contributing economically. So this is a free site, and they run by contributions from people like us that use it. So if you use something like this, not just necessarily Cache Tour, but any other program like Project GC. Project GC allows you to contribute, and then you get extra features because of that. But if you do enjoy something like Cache Canada, you can help donate to help them create more content or keep the lights on. So
yeah, that's absolutely right, and I've actually done that. I find this tool incredibly useful, so I made a donation as well.
Yeah.
And please, any of the tools that you like using, whether it's Cache Tour or Project GC, please consider supporting them, as well as I'm going to put a plug in for Cache Canada here as well.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, hit the bell, consider being a patron.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways you can support
a thumbs up on videos is very helpful to every vlogger out there, because when you put a thumbs up, that's interaction, and that's big in the algorithm for YouTube. So if it's simple as that, just go, hey, I like that one. Click. It's easy.
And I think the individual who is with Cache Tour that you indicated is CG. Is that CG Hove?
Yes, I believe. I think from the way I see him wrote that, works at Cache Tour. So
great. Please keep me honest. Yeah. If there's anything that I'm saying that is not quite right, please keep me honest. There's
comments that are coming up and just saying, oh, you can do this a different way or something like that. So it might be worthwhile.
That's very important to say. So again, the focus of our stream today is on basics, right? How to start out using Cache Tour. There is so much that you can do with this tool, and there are so many different ways that you can use it, and there are multiple ways to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So please, I encourage everybody, if you have tips and tricks, throw them up on here for everybody to see.
There. So CG Hove says, I'm an ambassador and also on support. Well, thank you for your work.
Great, thank you.
And thanks for joining us. We didn't know we would have somebody from the company or even an ambassador with us. It's awesome. So hopefully we're doing okay.
This seems like a really useful tool.
Yeah.
It is. It's amazingly useful. So maybe when we're done, I'll flip over to my account and show you how many plans I have in progress. Yep. So, but continuing on. So,
yes.
Dave, we were talking about optimization, then we were talking about the map. So, I'm going to click cancel. So I don't want any changes we've done here. We've already done our optimization. So we're going to go back to our trip screen.
Wow, Norway. Mm-hmm. That's great.
And here we have our trip screen. So again, we can now see that everything in here has been ordered, right? And based on the geography and the terrain and our ordering, it's telling us that we're going to do the Bistro of Origine, number 12. But something that I know about Dave and Karen, right, is that they don't necessarily just eat and run. So what we're going to do is go in here, right? So you saw that let me do this one more time. So we highlighted this this waypoint. We clicked on this edit button, and I'm going to go down to this field that says stop time override in seconds. So these two have been out walking, for a few hours already and doing all kinds of geocaches and seeing the sites and taking selfies and taking videos. So I think they really want to spend a little quality time together having a nice meal. So we're going to override the default stop time, and every kind of waypoint has a default stop time. We're going to override it, and it's in seconds. So 72,000 seconds is 2 hours. So I think that should be enough time for the two of you to have a nice lunch on the patio and maybe a glass of wine or a beer, and sample some of the excellent Quebec City cuisine. All right. So we've added that information in. We've overridden the default sort of stop time, and I think at this point we're really good to try and figure out what our route looks like and what our time looks like. How long are we going to be spending on this? So we go down here, we have the summary information. We now have this route information. So it says the total distance is 2.4 kilometers calculated. Now, again, this is Quebec City, so it doesn't tell us the up and down. It just tells us the horizontal distance. The estimated walking time at this point, and I want to stress at this point, okay, we're going to change this in a minute, is 30 minutes, and the calculated walking time is 2 hours 24 minutes, including stops. I'm going to skip down to our map. So our map now looks pretty good. It looks like everything's in pretty good order, right? Looks like it's in the order that's been selected by Cachetur. There's our lunch, right? So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, there's our endpoint. What I'm going to do, and I do this by default, every time I make a significant change and I save my changes to my routing or to my stop times or I've added a waypoint, I'll come down here and order a new route calculation, or alternately, I'll click on trip and order a new route calculation. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what it's going to do is it's going to go off and think about our waypoints and our order and our terrain and our geography, and it's going to do a new route. So if we go back up here, it says new route calculation in progress, estimate 2 to 10 minutes waiting time. I don't think I've ever actually had to wait 10 minutes, but there are times where I have to wait more than a few. Now, you'll see up here, there's a bell, and it has a little orange one beside it. When there's a new notification from Cachetur, that will light up, and it'll tell you how many. I clicked on it, and it said calculation of route for another romantic lunch in Quebec City is completed just now.
Nice.
That's great. So I'll mark that as red. I'll refresh my screen. And now when I scroll down to the route info, oh, that's interesting. It says we're going to be out there for 21 hours.
Wow, that's a long day.
Yeah, we've done that before.
I'm going to be tired.
Ooh, oh, I've made a mistake somewhere. Oh, I hope I didn't override every...
Or maybe it's an incredibly long lunch.
No.
Yeah.
Did I put too many zeros in there? I might have. Try the patio. 7,200, not 72,000.
Yeah.
There we go. So let's go down and ask for another new route calculation. And we'll wait just a minute for that to happen. So again, the importance of this particular route info section is not only to figure out, what your day is going to look like, but as you can see, it also helps you identify when you've made an error, right? So you don't simply go in and drop your waypoints in and tell it to prioritize it and then walk away and you've got a final trip. Take a look at what you've done, make sure it's in the right order, take a look at the route information, does it make sense or is something not right? Take a look at the map. Do you maybe need to tweak something around, change your order, do another route calculation? These are all important things to consider. So I'm going to do a refresh and see if our route calculation is done, and it is. We can see that there's a new Yep, it is. There we go. So route info, calculated walking time with stops, 3 hours, 54 minutes. That includes a 2-hour lunch. So I think, Karen, that's a pretty nice, morning and early afternoon, right?
It is. It's fabulous.
Nice.
Right. So what we've done so far is, just to summarize, is we put in our waypoints. We imported information from geocaching. We looked at corrected coordinates. We did a little bit of manual ordering of our trip. We did a little bit of automated sorting and prioritization of our trip. We fixed an error that I made, and we had the route calculation recalculated. So now we've got a pretty good trip. So what we should do now is, if we're comfortable with our trip, if everything's good, we should change it from a draft trip to a final trip. So I click on trip, and I click on edit trip info and waypoints. And then I click on this trip info screen, this tab. All right. So remember when we created this trip, we said the time is not decided? Well, we're going to remove that. The time is now decided. All right. We're going to go on the 26th of June. We're going to start at 10 a.m. and we're going to try and be back before 4 p.m. And we know that we are going to be back before 4 p.m. I click save. So what's changed is it no longer says draft up here. So our trip is in final state. Now that doesn't mean that we can't change it. We can go in and add waypoints. We can add corrected coordinates. We can remove a waypoint. We can change the order. We can do anything we want, and it'll still save. It's just that this trip is no longer draft. It's now ready to be used.
It also says it's ready and will be there in 91 days. So it's counting it down for us.
Yep, that's right. You can look at this every day, Karen, and say, okay, it's only 91 days. Now it's 90 days.
That's right.
Yeah.
Countdown.
All right. Again, there's a lot of information in here that's very valuable. We're going to go through some of this later when we look at printing. But what we're going to do right now is that we've saved our trip. We've edited the information. We've got a final trip. We're going to invite participants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite me. And you put in the username, and I'll do this again just so that everybody can see. You put in the geocaching username. No, sorry. Oh, help me out, CG Hove. Is this the geocaching username or is this the cachetur username? I believe it's the geocaching username. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I've had that come up before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's go with geocaching username unless somebody tells me different. But yes, I'm pretty sure this is the geocaching username. And
small edit menu again and set. I don't know if that's what you were asking. Try to find the small edit menu again and set ETA. Oh, that was from previous. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do this. So when you start to type in a name,
cachetur username.
Cachetur username. Okay.
That's how I've had it come up as I couldn't find someone because their cachetur username was different than their geocaching name, so I couldn't invite them.
So that's great information for me to know now. That's cachetur username. Great.
Yep. Cool.
As you start to type in a name, it actually brings up that user, right? So we can see London Westie and Lyrical Lass. I'm gonna say Lyric Lass. I gotta get that right. Okay, but what I'm going to do is invite me. Now, you have three options: co-host, participant, and observer, and those three options are identified down here at the explanation of roles. Co-host receives all privileges, and you can change that later. Participant basically, can see the trip plan, and they can print and clone. They can also make suggestions. The observer has limited access and can't join. All right, so generally speaking, you're going to want to invite people as co-host or participant. So I'm going to invite myself as a co-host. And what it's doing now is it's sending an email. Right, so if I were to go off and go into my own personal email for geocaching, right, because that was the email address I gave to Cachetur was my geocaching email address, then I would have an invite to participate in this trip. And again, sometimes you have to go in and check your spam folder. Yes, so in this case, I'm looking on my phone right now, and in this case, it did come into my my spam folder. All right, that's okay. So what we've done is we've created a trip, we've edited that trip, and we've invited a participant. So are we done? Not quite. All we've done is done our plan and invited some people to participate with us. But
nice.
Let's say that we're moving forward in time a little bit. It's getting closer to the time that we want to go on the trip. So let's think about what's going to happen. Let's go and click up on here on trip and click on summary. All right, so we're going to click trip and summary. And we're going to start looking at some of the summary information so that, again, we can start to think about the trip and the geocaching we want to do and some of the other things that are relevant to the trip, and be prepared to make any changes we might want to make. So, for example, we might come in here and find, 2 months down the road, just before we go on our trip, that some caches have been archived or disabled, or there's multiple DNFs. So, we would come into the summary and see some of that, and then we would go back and maybe modify our trip accordingly. Right? Summary is telling us about the caches, right? So we have 11 caches in total. It tells us what kind of caches we have and how many of each, and the walking distance in this case. It says one of the caches has corrected coordinates, and one of the caches has DNF logs. Now, that's not necessarily the last log. It's just saying it's seeing some DNFs.
Yep.
Right? We go down and we have some cache statistics. So again, we saw some of that before, but we see this, and this is summary information about our trip. So it's telling us about the overall DT, right? The minimum, maximum, average, the favorite points, our sizes that we're looking at, our elevations. This information can be important for people who are doing target trips, right? If you're targeting for a challenge cache to get certain DTs or certain cache type or certain cache sizes, this kind of summary information is very, very valuable to see if you're actually going to achieve your goals. Okay,
instead of the summary, click the tips and info option.
You're stealing all my thunder.
Oh, that's coming up.
Yes.
Okay. You're getting ahead of us, CG Hove. Okay. Corrected coordinates can be duplicated to new tips. Okay.
Yeah. So we have some basic route information here, and then we have more detailed difficulty and terrain information. We have place month information. So if you're interested in those, and we have attributes. And so if you're interested in which attribute you'll be collecting, again, this is important for certain trips. Right. So this is a very important trip summary information. So I'd suggest people look at that ahead of their trip. Right.
Yeah, it's like reading the description before you go to the cache.
Oh,
right.
what a
after.
What a great idea.
And then we're going to go and look at tips and info. So tips and info is another great screen to look at for your trip. So let's just give it a minute while it goes off and does its magic. All right, so trip info is going to start to tell you about recommended caches, right? So these are caches that are in Cachetur's database. The data may not be up to date, right? But it's some indication of some other caches you may want to consider. So it tells you about caches and favorite points, and you can get a little bit more information here, right? So you can click on that information button, and it's going to go off and actually pull up that particular cache, all right? This first one that I pulled up is unfortunately a virtual cache that is just been made unavailable. It actually is in Quebec City. It's a cannonball in a tree, and the city has decided that it needs to remove the tree. So it's unclear what's going to happen.
No.
Yeah, it's unclear what this is going to happen with what's going to happen with this cache. This is a cache owned by one of our Southern Ontario friends, Dex4.
Yeah, the tree was removed, and the cannonball was also removed by the military, and they're investigating it now, and it will be decided what they're going to do with it. They'll probably put it on display somewhere.
Yep.
But yeah, it's no longer in place. The tree and the cannonball are gone.
So I think our friend Dex is waiting to see what's happening with that cannonball before he determines if he has to archive this or what. Anyways, there are a number of recommended caches that are in here, and these are not necessarily within Quebec City. So you can see there's quite a few here. We're just going to scroll down, and it actually does have a map that shows a large area with caches and that have a lot of favorite points on them. So you could determine that there are additional caches that you want to do and add them to your trip. And it's very easy to add them to your trip, right? Or you could say, hey, that looks like a great day too. Maybe we're going to stay an extra day.
Nice.
All right. So that's really important information. Now, a couple of things about this. So we've created our trip. Let's go back to our trip. We've created our trip. And now it comes to the day of the trip. So, Karen, on the day of the trip, would you be someone who would prefer to do this trip using a printout, or would you be someone who would prefer to use this trip using your phone?
A printout.
A printout. Good. Let's do that. So one of the very, very powerful features of Cachetur, and the very first feature that I leveraged after my first trip, is using the print feature. So we come in here and click on print, and it's just got a phenomenal amount of information that you can put into the trip. So I'm going to add the trip description. I like the calculated totals. I'm going to add the map. I'm going to leave the descriptions in there because I want them in our printout. We're going to automatically translate hints right to English. We're going to add that personal cache note from geocaching.com if available. So that question came up before, right? We're going to add that into our printout. So we can choose to have spoiler pictures or not. Let's leave them in. We can have waypoint pictures or not. That's fine. Additional waypoints can be in our printout. So if things like parking trailheads, etc. We get to choose portrait or landscape. I'm going to leave that. We get to choose the paper size. Well, here in North America, we tend to be letter, so I'm going to change that. We can change the margin. So if we want extra space, or if we want it printed single-sided, double-sided, whatever. Lots of choices, but here is the most powerful thing. So there are lots and lots and lots of waypoint templates that you can use. And
Are you going to show that Cachetur can guess what time you will arrive at every geocache on the trip? That's from CG Hove.
I know how to do that in the app. I'm not sure how to do that here.
Oh, okay. All right. That's for another show.
Or if CG Hope wants to send you that information and we can pop it up on the screen and do it in a minute.
Yep.
All right. So let's look at a printout. Let's look and see what this sort of default printout looks like with things that we've added. All right. So we've asked to go off and print, and what it's going to do is it's going to come up with a preview on the screen. So is this viewable?
This is full screen right now.
Let me make it just a little bit bigger so it's easier, because some of you out there have bad eyes like me, so we'll make it just a little bit easier. So here we have a summary, right? We've got the information at the top. It's our title and our description, right? So another romantic lunch in Quebec City. Dave is taking Karen out for lunch and a long walk. We have the order, right? So we start at the Chateau Frontenac, and then we have our geocaches. You can see them in that order. And then for each waypoint, we have lots of additional information. So for Chateau Frontenac, it shows our coordinates. Because this is our starting location, it shows various pieces of information about when the sun's coming up, when's nautical twilight, civil twilight. Here is sunrise. So sunrise that day will be at 4:52 a.m. And here's when solar noon will be at 12:47. And
wow,
it has
that's good information.
It is great information, right? It has our comment. Yeah. Then we go down and we start looking at the caches. So here we have, this virtual cache, and it shows us all kinds of information. It tells us the size. It tells us the DT rating. It tells us the number of favorite points. It tells us the elevation. It tells us the cache owner and when it was published, right? It tells us the last log date, gives us the coordinates, tells us the city and the province. And right here, it tells us the last, 10 logs were, right? In this case, it was 5 smileys and a note and then 4 smileys, right?
Oh, I never knew what that meant.
Right. So
that's good to explain that. Now I understand that. Okay.
So we have in the printout, and if we do the printout right before our trip, it's got sort of that latest information on it, right? So
Yeah, we've done the printouts, and Karen loves them. And as a driver and a navigator, then you can ask, hey, can you look up in the printout, and has all that information right there without having to go on and opening up your phone. Let's say
Your phone is charging and
it's charging, it's out of reach, whatever, you got bad reception. You can get all the information right there. Hey, we're coming up to the cache in 15 minutes. Can you look up to see what the attributes are? Tell me everything we need to know. And it's all right there.
So it's also a great way if you're doing, say, a hiking trip, right? You're hiking through a forest and you've got a bunch of people meeting you. It's also a great way for you. You can print out 3 or 4 or 5 copies, however many little groups there are, and you can hand out the printouts, right? And now everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
So everybody has a list. They know which order you're doing it in, and here's some other information that they give you. So they tell you all the attributes, and this is really handy, right? You're searching for a cache. It's like, oh, is it winter friendly or not, or is it a tree climber or not? The information's right here. It gives you the hint, right? So this hint information, this clue information, is there. And here's a nice feature as well. It gives you some check boxes that you can fill in as you do each waypoint, as you do each cache. So if this was a find, you click the smiley. If it was a DNF, just check that. If it needs maintenance, check that. If you want to give it a favor point, if you took a photo, etc. So, there's lots of things you can do with this list, and it's just a great little tool to have with you if you are a print kind of person, right?
That is very handy. Yes.
Let's scroll down a little bit.
There was an answer to your question about the time, about guessing the time. On the same screen that you did stop time for lunch, there's an option called ETA override.
Okay, so that will be back in the waypoint information here, right?
Yeah.
So we click on that. Oh yes, there it is right there. ETA override. So we could put in a time that we want to get there.
Yeah.
Right. And it looks like it's 24-hour clock, right? Hour, colon, minute.
And there was a question on, so at the hotel to start the day, if you change the override to 10 o'clock, will the rest of the day be shown? And the answer was yes.
Yep.
Can you stop your day biff doing a multi-day trip? No. I'm not sure what that question was, but
okay. So let's get back to the list.
Continue on.
Just going through this, we get down to this one cache, and it's interesting in that this particular cache has a photo related to it. It's a spoiler photo.
Yep.
If we were to actually open this cache, we would see that this is listed as a spoiler photo. So let's do that. This is the Royal Battery.
On this cache, I didn't see the photo, but there's actually a video link that you can play that talks about the battery, and it shows you in video where the cache is. And if we have that in our video,
very handy.
If we did not play that video and I didn't see that hint, we would not have found this cache because it was nowhere near that arrow. The ground zero was not near that arrow.
Right. So this is the cache listing, and we did bring up that spoiler image, so you can see that it's actually pulling the spoiler image.
Yep.
But here's another interesting thing I found about that cache. If we look at the gallery, guess whose photo is the last one?
Hey!
Woohoo!
There you go.
That's awesome.
I did do a little bit of prep for this today, so what I wanted to show you was that this is just the default print template. You can play with all these other templates. You can create your own templates. There's all kinds of information that you can put out in here. You can change the layout. You can change the detail. It's just amazing what you get. And then down at the bottom, you get some calculated totals. You get lots of information about the regions and states or provinces that you're in, the route information. I mean, imagine if you were in Europe and you're trying to do 10 countries in a day, the kind of summary information that you can get for a road trip like that. It's just phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then you have a map. So here's a map of our day, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our day. Right. We ended at the funicular and take that little train all the way up. All right. So printing, that's just a summary of printing. We could do a whole show just on printing and the different kind of print templates that you could do. So please, keep that in mind. I know that there's some other people out there that would prefer to have all of this information on their GPS. So, they've got a Garmin, maybe they've got a Garmin Nuvi in their car and they want the information there. Maybe they've got a Garmin Oregon or GPS map and they want the information on their handheld. So we've got a lot of information in here that isn't directly related to geocaches. We've got the funicular, we've got our lunch, we've got our Chateau Frontenac starting point. We can actually create a GPX file. And I'm just going to go into... Nope. Hold on. I lost it.
Oh.
So Doug, can you put in? Can you also put in Adventure Lab waypoints?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
So I'm going to refer everybody back to our previous streaming.
That was the last episode.
Right. That shows you how to do that, but it's exactly the same, right? So you can get those coordinates any number of ways. You can put them in here as lab caches. You can mix, right? So as you can see in here, we've got different things. We've got different kinds of geocaches, and we also have non-geocache waypoints. You can mix all of those things into a cache tour trip plan and plan your whole day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh,
that'll be really
I lost
helpful.
Oh, it's over here. Sorry, I remember now. All right, so creating a GPX file. Where you have your name, right? You can, nope, I've lost it, guys. Request trip package, where is it?
Okay, well, while you're looking for that, I'm going to play our video once again for all the people that didn't, that weren't in earlier, the cache tour thing, and then we're going to talk about the prizes, okay?
All
so
right.
You look at that, and I'll play this for everybody, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Wherever you want to go geocaching, let Cache Tour take you there. And there you go. I just wanted to play that again as a thank you to Cache Tour for donating prizes for tonight's show, and I've already got the winners, so we can bring that up in a bit. So everybody stay tuned. We have winners, and we're also going to give away 2 Cache Canada trackable tags. So, okay, Doug, you're on again.
Apologies, I found it. So we were talking about creating a GPX file. Click on download and create trip package. All right. So when you go into create trip package, it does take a few minutes. So this really does take more than a couple of minutes. So we're not going to show the output here, but you can create any number of trip packages that you want. You can create a GPX file of the waypoints, which would be what you would use to put into your Garmin. You could create a CSV list of the waypoints if that's something that you wanted to use to import into a tool, for example. Like you could use that to bring into a Project GC if that was something you needed to do. You can create a driving route for Garmin's. You can create a track log for Garmin's. If you have a TomTom, you can create an ITN file. There are some other things you can do with cachetur, like creating packing lists. So you can create those. We have not created a packing list, so we don't have those options. But if you wanted to create a GPX, you click on this one, waypoints, GPX, and you ask for it. And it comes up to your downloads page, and it says that trip packages in the queue. This is the one that's in the queue, and it's not yet ready for download. If you come back and check later, you'll have a notification up here that says it's ready, and you can come back in, and you can see that, and you can download it. All right.
Nice.
I'm going to go back into our trip for a minute. There we go. So far, we've talked about printing, and we've talked about creating the GPX file. David, just wanted to check on time. We're coming up on an hour and 45 minutes.
Yep.
Do we have another 10 or 15 minutes to show the cachetur app?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So, if you remember earlier...
Okay, before you go on, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove this for now, and I'm going to do the winners. So I'm going to announce the winner. I'm going to pull them up on banners so everybody can do. And if you want to continue on watching, we have another 10 or 15 minutes to go, bringing up the actual app for your phone. So it would be really quick. So I just want to bring up, these are the 4 people that have been picked at random. I did it on the Wheel of Names that Cache Canada uses. So these 4 people, if you could email londonwesty@gmail.com, then I can get your contact information, and I can forward that to cachetur. They're waiting for that information to come. So here we go. Our winners are Glenn Morey, Mrs. Wewer, Just Joey, and Albedo39. So there you go.
Congratulations, everybody.
Yeah, so congratulations. Yeah. So Albedo39 is one of our patrons. So there you go. You're going to get either a cachetur tag or a cachetur swag pack. There are 4 prizes, 2 of each. We don't know. It'll all be by random, whatever they choose to send. So there you go. And we also have winners for our Cache Canada tags is Osfox, congratulations, and Bulking649. There you go. And Osfox is following us all the time, is always commenting on our videos, and we really appreciate that. And we're doing what we're doing. We're just sharing what we do to bring you along and entertain you. And if we put a smile on your face, that's even better. Or if we educate you on something, that is even more sweet. So thank you very much.
Congratulations to all the winners.
Yes, there you go. So we'll put that up again. And Doug, away you go.
Great. So earlier you remember that I invited me, DougyB, to participate in this trip. So what I've done now is I've brought up another window. This is cachetur, but you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, this is me logged in now as DougyB. So I had the email, I clicked on the email, and it brought this screen up in cachetur. And over here, it says, do you want to participate? And I can select this to participate in this trip. So I'm going to do that. And we'll just wait a minute while it says okie dokie. And you can see it's a private trip, and I'm a participant in this trip. So as a participant, I could go and view this, but I'm actually able to change it because that was the level of participation that I was given. So I'm not going to change it, but I did want to show you that this is now DougyB looking at the trip that P. Karen created. Okay, and the reason I wanted to show you that is so that we can look at the application and see how this works in the cachetur cachetur.no application. All right, so I'm going to bring that up on the screen. So this is an alternate way to execute your trip rather than a printout or a GPX file. So what I've got here is a view into my smartphone. So I'm running an Android phone, but you can see that I've got the cachetur application opened. If you don't have the cachetur application, first, create your cachetur account using the web, and then go to your phone and look for the cachetur application in either the Play Store or the Apple Store. Download it, install it, log in. Okay. Once you've done that, you can go into the trip screen and ask it to download trips. And it brings up whatever trips are upcoming or open in your list. So you can see that I've got a few trips from the last few days. I've got some trips that are planned. But here we go, another romantic lunch in Quebec City. That was the trip that we just created. So I'm going to load that trip up. Just click on it. Now we've got the check mark. So that trip is now loaded into the application. I go back to the screen, and under our list of trips, we can see another romantic lunch in Quebec City. I'm going to open that trip up. So I would typically do this on the day of the trip, right? So I'd make sure that it was downloaded just before the trip, not too far in advance. And then I would bring it up on the phone the night before or the day of the trip. And here's our trip, right? So we've got the same trip. So let me just scroll over here. You can see on the web browser, the trip, Château Frontenac and Virtual Rewards, Champlain, et cetera, and you can see the exact same thing here. A couple of things that you can do in the app. So you can click on these three dots, and you can ask the app to show the map. So it goes off and it gets the map for your trip. So, there's our Château Frontenac, and there's our little virtual and our mystery and our traditional. It shows our route, right? So we can go off and look at that information, right? That's very, very powerful because we're not actually going off to the website. We're not looking at a printout. We're looking in real time at the map that we're doing for our trip. Now, keep in mind, this assumes that you have either data or Wi-Fi access, right, to data. So you have the cellular data, mobile data, Wi-Fi, something that allows you to do this. But it's really great.
Okay, so this is an important feature. So I'll give you a scenario that happened, and that would show up on this app right here. Karen and I were on the ferry from Lévis, crossing the St. Lawrence River to Quebec City. We were on our way to the multi, that's the cache, Cross Canada multi puzzle cache. Mm-hmm. It was disabled from the last time I had looked at it. So I would see, I did know, but I would see that on this list that it was disabled, would I not?
Yeah, if you refresh the list, yeah.
Yeah, so when I bring the list and I refresh it and go, yeah. So, mm-hmm. So yeah, I didn't know the cache was disabled until we were on the ferry to go get it. And so it was missing.
Yeah. If you were to refresh the trip data from the server, then you would get all the latest information that cachetur has about all those waypoints. Right?
Yeah, once the trip is downloaded to the app, you can use all that trip data offline. Nice.
Yes. So let's go back to our trip. We've got all the waypoints in here, but there's additional things that we can do with the app. So let's bring up the Château Frontenac. This is just a lodging waypoint, so there's not a lot of information in here, but we do have, the reservation number and the phone number. If we had put the URL for the hotel in here, that would show up as a clickable link. We could actually click on that link from the app, and then on our phone, we would go off to the URL for the hotel to see whatever information we needed. We also have the ability to indicate when we've arrived and departed. We'd have down here the ability to bring up the map, right? So when I'm off doing a trip, when I start my trip, as soon as I start my trip, I click that departed. And as soon as I do that, down here at the bottom, it starts to tell me what's going on. It says I have 11 caches remaining. you're exactly on schedule, because although we're not starting at 10 o'clock on the 26th, we did tell it we're starting now. And since this is our first item, it says, hey, you're on schedule. Right? So now we need to know where to go. We look at the next item on the list. It says, okay, it's this cache. Here's all that summary information again, right? So we get that in the application. It tells us how far it is, 144 minutes, or meters, excuse me, or 1 minute and 47 seconds. Tells us the coordinates, and then it has information down here about the hint. Now, we can do a couple of things in the app. We can open the map. In this case, I'm using Android, so it's opening Google. So it's going to open the map to the location, and it's going to say, okay, you want directions to that location. That's a pretty long trip from where I am, but if you were standing at the Chateau Frontenac, it would be a quick trip. So that's a very powerful feature. Sorry, hold on. You get to see my niece. There we go. And you can actually open the cache. I use CGO, so that's my default tool. So it's opening the cache in CGO. Okay. And again, you can tell it when you've arrived, and then you can tell it when you're finished and you departed. Right. So now it says, oh, you're 8 minutes ahead of what cachetur thought you would be. Right. Another thing to note is that when you've done that, it grays out the ones that you said you've departed, right? And it's updated the estimated times, right? So this is a very powerful tool for navigation. So,
wow.
Dave, if this was a road trip, and Karen, if this was a road trip, I'd be using my app rather than a printout, right?
Yeah.
That's just me. I would choose to use the app because in my wife's Jeep, she has Android Auto, and I can bring up the map. So when I click map here, right, I go into this cache, and I click map. It's actually going to bring up the map on the car's screen,
nice.
And I get navigation through the car. So a very powerful capability. Right. So, keep in mind there's a number of ways to actually leverage the cachetur plan. So we talked about a printout. That's perhaps the simplest and easiest way, and it provides just a ton of information and very, very customizable. Right. So a lot of people use printouts still, and they're very handy. We talked about the GPX file, right? So that trip package, right? And that GPX file is very, very useful for anybody with either a handheld or in-vehicle GPS. So in combination with the printout, sometimes that's a very powerful combination. And we talked about the application, which for those of you who don't want to carry a GPS, or perhaps in some places in the world you can't. For example, if you go to Cuba, I don't believe you can take a GPS in with you, but you certainly can take a smartphone. This is a perfect option for navigating and having all of your trip information in one place. So there you go. We covered quite a bit today. I think I'm all talked out for now. Let's just summarize what we went through. So we talked about signing up to cachetur. We talked about authenticating. And as part of that, you're going to set your time in units. We talked about creating the trip, which included putting in basic information about the date and time of the trip, the type of trip it is, hiking or car, etc. We put in some waypoints for things like hotels, for lunch, and for transportation. We imported a list from a GC bookmark. Right? We put in a single cache, and we corrected the coordinates. We imported the corrected coordinates for that cache. We did a little bit of manual organizing of how we wanted our route to go, and then we used the waypoint optimization tool to organize the rest of our route. We edited the trip info and made it a permanent trip as opposed to draft, and we invited a participant. We looked at the trip summary, where we could get lots of information, and we talked about printing and all the various templates that are in there. We looked at creating a GPX file using the download trip package function, and we did a brief overview of the application. Dave, I can't hear you.
I had my mic muted. There's a lot of information there for everybody. That's awesome.
And this is an introduction to Cachetur, folks.
Yeah.
There is a lot more that you can do, and as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know about Cachetur that people were bringing up tonight. There's a lot of information out there. Quite a few people who are very familiar. There's forums that you can go to get information. There's some videos out there. There's some people that have done some amazing things with Cachetur, like planning their entire trip for a week, including flights and hotels and costs and tracking their expenses and just amazing stuff.
Nice.
So we've touched the tip of that iceberg.
Yeah, yeah, and we've gone through a lot tonight.
Yeah. So our we still need to do our trip to Kitchener. We're waiting. We kind of popped into that county, not knowing it was still in the red a few nights ago. But we're waiting for Kitchener-Waterloo to open up a little bit better before we attempt our Adventure Lab Cachetur route. But I think I'm going to start planning. We're doing our first road trip is likely to be the north shore of Lake Erie. We're going to be doing that one over 3 or 4 days, and we're going to be incorporating sightseeing opportunities as well, so it'll be kind of a travel vlog and a geocaching vlog. So I think I'm going to incorporate that and I put that into Cachetur trip.
So Dave, one of the things I chided you on recently was, we were talking on your last stream about that Adventure Labs in Kitchener, and I sent you a note. I said, you don't, you can plan the trip even if you can't go on it yet.
Right. Yeah. I just have to fit it in with all the other stuff we're doing.
Agreed. Earlier, I said if we have time, I'll show you what's in my list of upcoming trips. So can you? Can I share again?
Add to screen. There we go. Yep.
There we go. So this is DougyB. So you can see it's DougyB up here, and this is my ongoing trips. And these are things that I'm working on. So here are the two from today. I actually planned the Quebec City trip earlier today just to make sure everything was going to work, and then we did another romantic lunch in Quebec City. I've got a caching friend named Dancer Man, so he and I are planning on doing some caches near Ottawa that have dancing in their name. And I've just got a whole bunch of other trips that I've either been testing or I've gone on and haven't deleted them yet, or I haven't made them, they're still in draft, or that I've been planning. So I told somebody that I was planning that Highway 17 virtual.
Yep.
So you can see here, I've created so far just separate day trips for that Highway 7 virtual.
Nice.
Yeah, and just to talk to one point that Karen brought up real quick, you asked about Adventure Labs. So here is a trip where I've got all kinds of different items in here. So I've got, I plan to stay at the Holiday Inn in downtown Ottawa. I have waypoints for the virtual. I have locations for Adventure Lab. I have mystery caches. So I have all kinds of different things in that one trip. And Cachetur has planned it all out for me. So this is, my first day around Ottawa of getting the waypoints for that virtual. So
and the COs for that virtual are with us tonight.
A and K can see them up there.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So one of the things that I really enjoy doing is I really enjoy planning a trip, even if I can't go on it. Right, we're in a lockdown situation right now, but I like thinking about what that next trip might be, and you can do that right with Cachetur, and you can do it really easily, and you can spend just a few minutes at it. You can spend a few hours at it, and it's there. You can just leave it there, and take it out of draft later on, change the date, add to it, whatever you want to do. And again, there's just a lot more you can do with Cachetur. I'm sure we'll have other sessions, and maybe there's some of your viewers out there that have some advanced tips and tricks, and they'd like to come on and stream as well.
Yeah, anybody that wants to come on and they think they can provide some really good information and add to what we're doing, please send us a note and we'll talk and we'll get you on. It's not easy being on screen and talking about things. People go, well, how do they know? Well, we're all just in this. We're all just users of that program, and we tell what we know.
And we get told from time to time too, because we don't know everything.
Right. Yes.
Yep. And that's very important, right? So,
yep.
Karen and Dave, thank you very much for having me on tonight. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, there's a lot of information there. That's really good.
And as I said last time, if anybody wants to reach out to me via GC, it's DougyB, DougyB, and email dougyb.gc@outlook.com.
Great.
Next time, I'll have that on a banner. Or you could type that in the chat. So
it's anyway, right at the top of the YouTube chat.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Doug. We're going to chat with you when we leave. So we're going to leave with a little video, and then we'll say goodnight to everybody. Say thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again. We're going to have Cache Shadow on again for Ask a Question, get and somewhat of an appropriate answer. He's a pure joy to be on with, and you can ask him anything. You can ask him the distance from the Earth to the moon. You can ask him what he likes to drink. It doesn't matter. So anyway, there you go. Thank you so much. Join us again for Cache Canada Chats, and we'll be back Wednesday for another 1 Minute Wednesday. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.